So in this tutorial, we will write a calculator with HTML, CSS and JavaScript. We will use pure JavaScript, no frameworks, no libraries. It will be easy. Let's get started. So for this tutorial, I'll be using Firefox because Firefox provides a nice utility to work with CSS grids. We'll see that in a moment when we write CSS. So here I have just a normal HTML template. So first we'll write the HTML for the calculator. So the HTML is very basic. We'll start with a div. The div has class calculator. So inside this there will be two parts. So the first part will be the screen where the numbers will be displayed, which will just be an input. So the screen is just an input of type text. It has a class called calculator screen. It has an ID called result, and initially we'll start with the value 0 and it will be disabled so that the user cannot edit this text. As you can see here, it is disabled, so I can't click on it. The next part will hold all the calculator keys. So for that, let me start by creating a div. So the div has a class calculator keys. Inside this, I'll write all the keys. So first let's start with the operators: plus, minus, multiplication and division. So all the buttons are actually button elements. They have a type of button, and all the operators have a class of operator. And finally they all have a value. So value is basically just the action you want them to do. For example, plus, minus, multiplication and division. So these values do not matter. Actually they will matter inside the code, but you can put whatever you want. You can also write plus if you like. One more thing to notice is here. So this ampersand times semicolon produces this multiplication character, and ampersand divide semicolon produces this division character. Again, you can use whatever you want. You can also use asterisks and slash. It's your calculator. Do whatever you want. Now we'll start writing the number keys. So numbers keys will also be similar to these operator keys with some minor differences. So the main difference here is the class. The class has now changed to number. Basically this will be used to differentiate between an operator and a number press. The rest is almost the same. The value is whatever is written here. So for 7, the value is also 7. Just like that, let us finish all the numbers. So here I have finished all the numbers from 0 to 0 to 9. Now there are 3 more buttons left. Let's do them. So the first button is the decimal point. So for that, the class is decimal. It also has an ID of decimal, and finally a value is the decimal point. Next is the all clear button. So the class is all clear, the ID is clear, and the value is also all clear. And finally the equals sign. So the class is equal sign, the ID is equals, and the value is equal sign. So with that, our HTML is done, but as you can see, it does not look like a calculator at all. So let's fix that. Now we'll start writing the CSS. Now I'm writing the CSS in the same file. You can, or you probably would want to separate the CSS in separate files, but for the purpose of brevity, I'm writing it in the same file. So I'll start by setting some defaults. So I'll start with the HTML element. I'll set its font size to 60%. I'll set the font family to sans serif. And finally, I'll set the box sizing to border box. Now I will take all elements using the star rule, and I will set all their margin and padding to 0. This will make our life a little bit easier later when we will be dealing with margins and all. Now let's start by our calculator. So the first thing that I would like to do is to have it as a little bit of border, and I will want to move it to the center of the screen. So let us do that. I'll put some border, just a small gray border. It's 1 pixel wide and the color is light gray, and the border corner radius will be 5 pixels. I'll set the position to absolute, Then I'll set the top to 50% and left to 50%, so that as you can see here, the top left corner has moved to the center. Now I will transform it with a translate of -50% and -50% so that it moves to the center. Now this is just a basic moving to center kind of thing, if you already know about it. So, and if you do not know about it, let me just mention it briefly. So with these 3 lines, I am moving the top left corner to the center, but I do not want the top left corner to be the center. In fact, I want the center point of the calculator to be in the center. So for that, we are moving the top left corner 50% to the left and 50% to the up. Now it's easy to see that this moves the center point to the center. Anyway, it's a different topic. There are also other ways you could have achieved this. Finally, I'll set 400 pixels of width. Now let us style the calculator screen. So first, what I would like to do is to make its width 100% so that it stretches the whole thing. I'll make its font size a little bit bigger. So 5 rem. If you do not know about rem, I already have done a video about different units of size in CSS. I'll put a link. So what this does, it makes the font size 5 times the font size of its parent. I'll also put a height of 80 pixel. I'll also remove its border, and then I'll set a background color of a grayish, and I'll set its text color to white. I'll set the text align to right so that the text starts from the right, and finally I'll set some padding. So I'll set the right padding to 20 pixel and the left padding to 10 pixel. Now let us start styling the buttons. So I'll give them a height of 60 pixel. Then I'll make their background colors white, and also I'll remove the border. So as you can see, the borders are gone. I'll also remove the background color. I'll set the background color to transparent. I'll set the font size to 2 times the parent's font size. I'll set the color to somewhat dark grayish. And finally I'll set a transition which will be used when we are hovering over the button. So when we are hovering over the button, let us take the hover pseudo class. So when you're hovering over the button, I just want the background color to change. So basically the background color will be a somewhat whitish, so as you can see here. Now for the operators, I will change the colors to a little bit. So let us start with the operator. So the colors will be somewhat bluish so that they can be differentiated from the numbers. So for the all clear button, I have just changed the background color to a shade of red, and just when I am hovering over it, the background color will change to a different shade. This is just to differentiate between, or this is just to make the all clear button stand out from the others. The same thing I have done for the equal sign button. The background color is a little bit of a shade of blue, and when I am hovering over it, the background color will change to a dark version. Now comes the most important part. The calculator keys should actually be a grid layout, because you know the keys are arranged in a grid. Let us do that. So the first thing I'll do is set the display to grid. And as you can see, by default in grids, all the elements are arranged in one column. Or maybe all the elements, there is only one column and all the elements will take up the whole column. So I want there to be 4 columns. So let us do that. Grid template columns, I'll use the repeat function. So it will repeat 4 times and 1 fr. Now it has started to look like a calculator. So now there are 4 columns and each column has same width. Now I want to do one more thing, which is I want to move this equal sign button to somewhere here. So let us see. So I will use the element inspect element. Now this is what I was talking about, the good thing about Firefox. So if I go to the calculator keys class, you will see it says grid here because it is a grid. Now if I click on it, it will show a grid highlight, and over here I can do this. Let's say display line numbers. So it will display all the grid line numbers. So this is the first line, second line, and so on. So what I want to do is that I want to move this equal sign to the right side, and I want it to stretch. So I want it to start from this second line and move all the way down. So how can I do that? So for that I will use this. So let us take the equal sign. So I'll first set its height to 100% so that it takes up the whole height of its container. Now I will do this. So I will do grid row start and set it to 2. So what it will do, it will start the equal sign from the second row or the second line, as you can see here. Now since it occupies one row, it just moved it to that space. But I also want it to stretch down, so I want it to end at the 6th line. So I'll do this. I'll do grid row end and to 6. So now as you can see, it has stretched it. But now how can I move it to the right side? You guessed it, I'll use grid column start and grid column end. So I'll start it at the column 4 and I'll end it at the column 5. As you can see here, it has started from 4 and ended at 5. Now instead of writing all of this separately, we have a shorthand property which is known as grid area. So for grid area, I will write 4 values separated by slash. So the first value is row start, the second value is column start, the third value is row end, and the last value is column end. So it also does the same thing as before. I'll also do one thing. Here in the star element, I will also write box sizing to border box, so that this screen has the same width as the rest of the calculator. So with this, our calculator's styling is done. The only thing that is left is to write an actual code. So let us get right into that. So I will write it in a script tag. Again, I am using the same file to write the JavaScript. If you want, you can separate it. In fact, you would probably want to separate it. So I'll start by declaring 3 variables. So the first variable is the first operand. So basically this is the first number of whatever operation we want to perform. The second variable will hold the operation when the user presses one of the operators. So basically this will be either plus, minus, multiplication or division. And finally we'll set a current input, which is basically whatever the user is writing right now. So the first 2 values will be set to null and the second value will be set to an empty string. So for the first 2 values are null because right now we do not know what is the first operand and we also do not know what is the current operation. I'll then get the screen using get element by id. So the screen has an id of result, and with this we'll get access to the screen and we'll store it in the screen variable. Now we'll start writing the event handlers. So basically for all the numbers, I'll have one function. So whenever the user clicks on the number, that function will run. I'll also have one function for handling the operators, and then one for handling the equal sign and decimal and all clear, the others thing. So let us start writing the function for the numbers case. So the handle number function will be run whenever the user clicks on a number. So here inside this function, this will refer to whatever the user has clicked on. So basically using this dot value, I can get the value of the number user has clicked on. So for example, if the user clicks on 7, if you remember, the 7 button 7 has a value of 7. So using this dot value, you will get access to 7, and then I will add it to the current input. It is a empty string. So basically whatever the current input is, I will just put 7 behind it, and then I will set the value of the screen to this new updated current input so that it will be shown on the screen. So the handle decimal function will be run when the user clicks on the decimal button. It's also similar to the previous one, except it will only append a decimal point. So the handle operation function will run when the user clicks on an operator. So this is similar. So here what it does, it first sets the operation variable to the value of whatever the user has clicked on. So if the user clicks on plus, this will contain plus here, this value. So we'll store it to the operation variable. We'll also move the current input variable to the operand 1 variable, and then we'll set the current input to empty string again, and we'll display 0 on the screen. So what it does, it means when the user clicks on an operation, he has done writing the first operand. So we'll move the current input to the first operand, and we'll reset everything so that the user can start typing the second number. So the handle equals function will run when the user clicks on the equal sign. So here is the code of our calculator. So basically we will write a function called calculate in just a moment. So we'll pass 3 variables. So the first number, the operation, and whatever the user has written until now. This function will return the result, which we will show on the screen. And then we will set the current input to the empty string, because now the user will start writing a number again. We'll also clear the operation and the operand 1 variables. And here is the calculate function. So the calculate function will take 3 arguments, the first number, the operation, and the second number. Then I will check what the operation value is. So if the operation is plus, we'll return plus. You'll also notice that I am using parse float because these are actually string. So if I did not use parse float, they will just concatenate the 2 strings. But then the strings can contain a decimal point, so we'll use parse float. This will basically convert them to a floating point decimal number, and then we'll perform the operation. So if the operation is a plus, we'll add them. If it's a minus, we'll subtract them, and so on. And finally, we'll have a clear function. This will be run when the user clicks on the all clear button. So I will clear the 2 variables. I'll set the current input to an empty string, and I will also display 0 on the screen. Now let us connect these functions to the buttons. So I'll first get the access to all the buttons. So I will use the get elements by class name. So using the class name number, I will get access to all the numbers. Using the class name operator, I will get access to all the operators. And if you remember correctly, so this get elements by class name actually returns more than one element, because class name is not unique. So with one class, there can be a lot of elements sharing the same class. So this actually returns a list. So I will have to go over the list and set the event listeners to individual buttons. So here is just easy to understand. I am just looping over all the numbers, all the elements in the numbers list, and for each individual number I am adding an event listener which will run on the click event, and I am putting just the handle number function. I will do the same things for the operators, except I will use the handle operation function this time. And finally the other 3 buttons. So for the equals button, I will add the handle equals function. For the decimal button, I will add the handle decimal function. And finally for the all clear button, I will add the clear function. With this, our calculator should be ready. Let us check it out. So if I write a number, let's say 75, and then click on the plus button, so as you see it goes to 0. Now let us write something else, let's say 10, and when I click on equals, I get the result. Now I can start writing once more, let's say 98 times 7, and I get the result. If I click on all clear, it deletes everything. Let us check the decimal button. So let's say 32.8 and minus 10, and I get this. Now this is expected for in JavaScript because of how decimals work. So if you try to do arithmetic using decimals, you will not get exact number, which is a known limitation of JavaScript. We can fix it, however this is out of the scope of this tutorial. Now this calculator is of course not complete, I mean in the usual meaning of complete. So for example, let's say if the user writes decimal more than once, it will actually work, which should not happen. So fixing these errors is a different story altogether. So for this tutorial, I think we have got a basic calculator which works fine, which also looks nice. So that was all about this tutorial. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please like, comment, and if you would like to see more like this in the future, please subscribe. It helps the channel grow. Thank you.